My water's right here. No, it's not the time.
We're punctual. 11:30. Wow, this gives me a good bass in my voice. Good morning, and to some of you like myself, good afternoon. If you've flown in from Europe, there's a jet lag going on, it's real. If you randomly strolled into this room, I want to give you a sense of where you are. So you're obviously in the right place, at the right time, in the right city, and attending the right room. Stating the obvious, but we're in Austin. And Austin is amazing for many reasons. The first thing that hits you when you walk around the streets is the talent density. I was walking down the street yesterday and I ran into Malcolm Gladwell. I'm a huge fanboy, so I interrupted him in a phone call, said like, I'm a fan! He was not my fan. He was like, yeah, great man. Austin is warm, it's friendly, and it's very similar to the creator economy, which we're all very passionate about and we're here to speak about today. If you ask me, you've got to love the city motto, which is keeping Austin weird. I think that they really do walk the walk and talk the talk, because here I am, I'm a Swede, I'm today's moderator, and we're notoriously introvert and socially awkward. So it doesn't get more weird than that. So I love that they're stepping up to the plate. But fortunately for all of you, we have this crazy, great panel to make up for that. And today is all about one thing. It's about the incredible intersection, which is gaming, music, and content. And we have a panel filled with experts. I think that you can call our times many things, but it's definitely been a renaissance in terms of storytelling, because these three areas have never performed and thrived as much as they're doing right now. So what we'll do, we'll be sharing, caring, and explaining, and uncovering together this wonderful topic. I have one last thing that I want to say. Are you familiar with Tic Tacs? Hands up. Can you rate? It's like a mint, okay? And so I have one job here today, and so I'm the moderator. And there are two kinds of moderators. Some are like bad breath, and some are like Tic Tacs. And so a moderator, which is like a bad breath, is somebody who constantly makes themselves sort of introduced in a way that you dislike. They're always there, they're annoying, they steal the oxygen, they steal the air. And some moderators can be a bit more like a Tic Tac, a mint. Cool, refreshing, sort of a scent in the background. And so my job today is to be a Tic Tac, not bad breath. And so I'm not going to introduce myself, we're going to dive straight in, but at any point in time, if you feel that sort of the vibe is wrong or somebody's doing a bit too much, sort of, can you just help me, yell Tic Tac? 1, 2, 3, Tic Tac. Okay. With that said, I would like to start and introduce our first speaker, which is Ben. Ben works with Angry Birds, and undoubtedly they've transcended its gaming origins to become this global phenomenon. And so, Ben, I was wondering, could you maybe tell us and the people in this room a bit more about the role you have at Rovio and why you're with us here today?
Sure. All right. So, yeah, hi, my name's Ben Mattis. My LinkedIn profile says Mr. Angry Birds, which I love. I think that's a fantastic title, and I'll maybe ask for that to be on my tombstone when I'm buried. My official title is Creative Officer, Angry Birds. So Angry Birds it's 15 years old as an IP. We were transmedia before the word kind of existed. So there's movies, there's TV shows, theme parks, toys, mobile games, PC console games, etc. We like to consider ourselves as 4-quadrant or cradle to grave. So ideally, the kids are playing it, and all the way up to sort of grandma's playing it, before bed kind of thing. So it's an IP that kind of can be enjoyed by anyone. So that's amazing, and that's the plus side. And on the downside, that means you work with a lot of different teams, with a lot of different target audiences, on a lot of different platforms, in a lot of different mediums, and it can very quickly go like this. right, where you have this very, very sort of diasporic IP, and it's kind of hard to have it feel combined and cohesive and like it's all moving in the same direction. So my job as a creative officer is to try and help move it in the same direction. I like the analogy of the sort of bonsai tree, right, where if it's left to its own devices, it's also going to kind of go like that. And yet, if you're very careful and strategic, you can kind of nurture it to grow in a very particular direction with a very particular vision. And so I'm kind of the bonsai guy, not so much cutting off branches, but rather trying to help them twist to follow a single arc or a particular vision for the IP in the hopefully decades to come.
Great. Beautiful analogy with twisting trees. So, Timothy, AFMAO has built this big and deeply engaged fan base. It's been built through both creative storytelling based on Minecraft, but also through massive following and content creation over YouTube. Why don't you tell us a bit more about yourself and your role and about AFMAO?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Timothy Salmon. I'm the president of Catface, who is owned by AFMAO. I've been with the company for going on 7 years, working with them through role play times, which are the machinima and the storytelling, all the way up to today's running the company and helping them with merch and helping them with things like our graphic novel coming out, stuff like that. I'm a little bit more newer to this side of things, and I wish I had as good of an analogy as Ben had. But yeah, thank you. But you know, a lot of it has been helping continuing the use of brand. Like whatever we do, we are AFMAO. Whatever we do, we are Catface, and everything we touch has to follow that sort of brand rule. And everything we make is this the best version of the Catface item we could do? And a lot of that goes into the content creation and using anything to our disposal to make that motion correct.
Cool. Amazing. We're off to a great start. Linda, last but definitely not least. So you are part of the pop trio Love and Caliber, one of many successful acts from Epidemic. And I was wondering, could you maybe tell us a little bit about your journey as an artist leading up to this exact moment here?
Sure. I'm Linda. I'm a songwriter, producer, artist from Sweden. I learned early on that my passion in life is music. So it became kind of natural to like study and, evolve that side. And then this year I've been working with Epidemic this is our 10th year, so it's actually an anniversary right now. And also, I have high anxiety, and I'm not used to these kind of things. I'd like to think I'm pretty good at songwriting. This is not something I'm good at, so bear with me.
Great.
I tend to stop talking like a human being when I'm in this kind of situation, so just bear with me. I'm so glad that I have this professional panel. These guys are actually at the top of their game. They're so good, and I think you're gonna walk out of here with so much knowledge and tips and so.
Thank you, Linda. Let's use that as a jumping off point. So let's dive into top of the game. So Ben, I thought you could maybe kick us off. So you mentioned the different multi-platforms that Angry Birds over the year have come to sort of dominate in some cases. But take us through the journey. Like, what did it look like from a chronological order? Like, how did it start and how did it evolve?
Sure. So just disclaimer, I'm not the creator of Angry Birds. I wasn't there on day zero. I didn't invent it, so I can't take any of that sort of credit, just to make that absolutely clear. I've been at Rovio for 5 years. So Angry Birds turned 10 shortly before I joined, and I've been there for the last 5 years. But I've studied the IP very deeply and maybe know more than the average person about it. I guess that's fair to say. But yeah, it started as a mobile game. Maybe one of the first killer apps when sort of touch gaming happened, and it really kind of blew up in 2009, 2010, and there was an era where, man, everybody was playing Angry Birds, right? If you had an iPhone, you had Angry Birds installed. If you had an Android, you had Angry Birds installed. Your parents were playing it. Your niece and nephew were playing it. My dad, 80-some years old, never had a moment in his life for video games. One day called me up and said, hey, I discovered this really fun game. There's like these birds and like pigs, and it's kind of like solitaire, but it's not. Literal quote, he actually said that. And it was like a wonderful moment, right? Because I could like connect to my father on something so important to me, and such a huge part of my life. So because of that meteoric rise, Angry Birds very quickly became a licensing behemoth. Angry Birds diapers, Angry Birds baby food, Angry Birds pet bowls, like you name it, it was everywhere. Pros and cons, again, no judgment, but it was everywhere. And that then opened up a lot of doors. It opened up doors to animation studios. It opened up doors to movies. It opened up doors to a lot of kind of collaborations. And so for a lot of people, they discovered Angry Birds. If they didn't play the mobile games, they discovered Angry Birds in 2016 when there was the first theatrical release. And it was one of sort of an early era of movies based off of video games that did, quite well theatrically and high reviews and all of that sort of stuff. And that created a really new era whereby we had the kind of classic Angry Bird, the red sphere that you probably know, and if you ever played any of the video games, Red and Chuck and Bomb and those characters. And then we had this sort of new world where we had birds who spoke English and wore clothes and had hands and feet and, whatever, like a whole sort of sub-universe. And many, many spin-offs have derived from that sub-universe as well. And that's a little bit what I was talking about when I was talking about the tree that I had to kind of help, whatever shape. And then we are here today, right? It has come from there. The movie was a huge moment in the history of that of this IP, and created many, many new opportunities, some of which we continue to reap today, right? We recently announced that a third movie is in production and is coming out, in the not too distant future. So that branch very much continues.
But Ben, did all the different parts of the franchise resonate equally well with the fan base and sort of the people who were interacting, or were there things that stuck out in a good way, in a bad way? Like, do you regret some things? How do you
100% not. Absolutely not. I mean, I wish so, right? The dream.
Angry diapers just sounds wrong.
The dream of transmedia is that every platform and every instantiation, every iteration of your IP on every platform appeals to all consumers equally, and that it's cumulative, right? Oh, I watched the movie, I'm going to play the game. Oh, I played the game, I'm going to buy the toys. Oh, I bought the toys, I'm going to, watch the TV series, et cetera, et cetera. Then I'm going to take my kids to the theme park. Then. That's the dream.
Got it.
That doesn't always happen. And everyone tries, and the person who finally cracks that nut will have won transmedia, and I'll sign their plaque. But we wish we were there, and we're not. There's still a long journey to get there. It's very, very difficult to do, because the people who go to see the movies aren't always playing the games. They're not necessarily the same audience.
Yeah. So let's stick with the theme of bringing things back to the beginning. So Timothy, I think that today, AFMA, incredible success, 22 million subscribers. But bring us back to day zero, day one. Like, what was the journey? How did this evolve over time so we get a sense for it?
So long before I joined the team, AFMA, they started, August 2012. It was Jess in her basement, just kind of playing games for fun. She just had her kid, and she was trying to find something to do. And she started making videos on early 2012 YouTube. And it just kind of kept growing. And her husband, Jason, he's our CEO, amazing coder. He was able to take a lot of that and change Minecraft and change how Jess was making her videos and change how they were playing the game and telling stories, because her whole thing was always stories from the beginning. Any true old school audience member will recognize that she started with things like Minecraft Diaries, which hits 10 years today, which is fantastic. But
And there's a theme here.
yeah, another 10-year anniversary. But she started, her storytelling started with that, and from there she just kept growing the channel. They started a business. I think it was 2015 is when they started the business side of things, moved to Washington in 2016, hired me in 2018 to help kind of their flagship show, My Street. I came in and helped start filming that. From there, it was a lot of just how do we enhance storytelling? How do we change how machinima is made? How do we change how people are doing this? Because people were doing it for years before us, but how do we stand out? And then, of course, COVID hits, and we had to, again, adapt and change because it's YouTube. You're never able to just stay one way. YouTube changes so frequently that we had to adapt again, and that became more gameplay. That became more, less story, more just them having fun playing with these random things that we had to code and build in Minecraft. And now we're seeing ourselves kind of going back towards that storytelling, and we're really enjoying it. It's being able to make what we call movies, which are over 45-minute videos. It's a lot of fun because we get to tell these really long, extensive stories now. And we're kind of going back to our roots and where AFMAO was known for and grew from.
So let's see if we can do a compare and contrast. And so, Timothy, AFMAO is more creator-centric in terms of how it originated, and sort of Angry Birds is more game-centric in terms of how it originated. Like when you listen to each other, like what are some of the things which you find to be similarities? What are some of the differences? Is there anything that you're envious from each other that you wish you could have deployed or thought about?
I wish we could make 2 hours of content a week.
Yeah.
I'm very envious of how much content they crank out. We are not that fast.
I mean, yeah, we had this conversation earlier this week. We're making anywhere as low as 160 to 200 minutes of just, footage for people to consume. And that's only on one channel. We own more than one channel, and we run more than one channel. And it's just a mass amount of, media for the audience that, we're trying to come up with random stories all the time. I do, though, wish we had as much reach as you guys were able to pull off, which was always kind of my thing, watching how you guys did that and seeing the history of Angry Birds and where they started and where they ended up is just phenomenal, and I love watching that.
What about any obstacles that you might have shared in common? Like, what are some of the things you struggle with? Licensing, I guess, is one, but what are some of the other things, perhaps?
I think almost any brand struggles with this. It's always, as you spread, as you make new media, as you make new ventures, how do you keep the brand's soul intact to those new ventures? How do you keep everything cohesive? And I think that that's something almost any brand really struggles with, because we are, we're launching our first graphic novel. How do we make sure that it's still an AFMAO graphic novel? It's still an AFMAO story, and you gotta continuously keep track of that because things can go off the rails really easily, and I'm sure you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you get it wrong, you get caught out, and you get caught out in public in a frankly very damaging way, right? If you mess up the IP, and I'm not just talking about like, oh well, Bomb doesn't have that color eyebrow, but like if you do something that is counter to the IP or the pillars of the IP in the eyes of your community, they're gonna let you know, and they will find the largest soapbox they can find and the biggest megaphone they can find in order to broadcast far and wide what a mistake you've made. And so, I think again, when we're talking about universal truths in IP development, there is that fine line between sort of nostalgia and serving the core fandom, giving them more of what they want, telling them the story that they're comfortable with, not pushing limits in terms of what the characters can say and do, sort of staying true and coherent and consistent with the legacy. and innovating enough that you can go in new directions, you can explore new story types, you can introduce new characters, you can try new genres, you can explore new platforms. There's the zone of acceptable brand violations, and if you go outside the zone of acceptable brand violations, the penalties are significant. But if you stay 100% centered in the zone of acceptable brand violations, you don't evolve. So there's that that discomfort zone where you as a creator are uncomfortable because you're worried about the fan reaction. The fans might be comfortable because you might be changing a little bit too much. And if you don't test those waters, you stay flat. And if you stay flat, you don't innovate. And I would imagine...
Oh yeah, definitely in the creator space, that is a huge thing. If you don't evolve, you just kind of fade out. And no one's as telling when you mess something up as the audience on YouTube. They will call you out just in an instant, and next thing you know, it's all over Reddit and X and everything else, and you're then like, oh, how do I fix this? Yeah.
But I mean, it's feedback, so it's great, right? But
you have to read the comments. You have to read them, and it hurts, but you have to do it.
I agree. So, Ben, there was something that you mentioned previously, which is some people play the game, some people watch the films, and there's some overlap, but it's not perfect. Is there a trade-off between, as you both sort of look to find new audiences and new platforms, to catering to the current super fan base, or trying to attract new fans? Like, how do you think about that trade-off, if there is one? And Ben, why don't you go first?
I mean, absolutely. So I mentioned this earlier. We have these sort of two aesthetics. Well, we have more than two, but we have two very well-known aesthetics. We have what we call the classic aesthetic, and we have the movie aesthetic. Movie, very mass market, will be in the theaters. Parents will take their kids to see it, buy the toys, hopefully, whatever, get the Happy Meals or the restaurant toys or like whatever it is. But they might then fade away, right? Because the movie is, it's a moment in time, it's a blip. They're not necessarily going to take their kids and sign up to the Reddit channel and sign up to X and follow us on Instagram and watch our TikToks. I mean, some of them will, but not necessarily all of them. The people who do, generally speaking, have been with the IP for 10 years, or they grew up playing the IP as kids or whatever. They have a nostalgic preference towards the classic style. So in our IP, we have this sort of constant, I don't want to call it tension, but let's say there's a dichotomy. There's a back and forth between classic style versus movie style. What's the right style? What's the right universe? What's the right narrative to explore for which opportunity? And, ideally, those would merge into a single coherent story so that people felt comfortable jumping back and forth between the two naturally. But there's some work to do to get there. TBD whether or not people accept the third movie as a step towards that, but certainly something we're working on. We would like people to feel comfortable jumping back and forth between the two equally, and that's not always the case. It's hard.
Timothy, what are your reflections?
So, I mean, YouTube already makes us adapt so much. 1 year we are geared towards an audience that's more in the 16 to 18-year-old demographic, and then the next year we have to fluctuate and turn into more of the 8 to 13-year-old demographic. We have to fluctuate constantly, but then it's also figuring out, how do we keep fluctuating but go back to a path that makes us who we are, but not alienate anybody in the process. So we are, as I said, going back into a more storytelling base, a more back to our, origins. But we're not forgetting about the fact that there are a lot of younger audience members that they might not enjoy that as much. So we focus on, like the graphic novel I brought up, but that is more aged towards that younger audience so that we don't alienate them from our videos. We're still including them in our thought process and our path forward.
Got it. I want to switch a little bit to music, Linda. But before I do, I'm going to ask the audience something. Hands up if you've seen Stranger Things. Look at that. 90%. Hands up if you recognize the artist Kate Bush. Running up that hill. Okay. And so the reason I put that into context is because in 2017, in that Love and Caliber put out a put out a track called Faster Car, which was picked up by AFMAO. And today you have millions and millions of listeners across Spotify and all the other DSPs all around the world. So the similarities are like very, very sort of clear in terms of how this sort of can play out to an artist's benefit. Can you maybe take us through from the inside? Like, what was the experience like? Bring us back to 2017, the music, the interactions with Timothy and teams. How did that evolve? How did it feel?
Yeah, so I mean, as a songwriter and artist, you really want to make your music big on streaming platforms, right? So that's not really as easy as it sounds. So in 2017, you said, yeah, FMI picked up Faster Car, and it just blew up our streaming platforms. Like insane.
Was it overnight, over weeks?
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning and sort of update.
Yeah. We woke up and just what happened. You know, we didn't know what had happened. So that was really an eye opener for us to see how that kind of collaboration really benefits us both, right? So no, it was really surreal, and we hadn't thought about that kind of collaborations before, because I think every artist thinks like, okay, now I'm just gonna, record a song and I'm gonna put it out on Spotify. But I mean, there are other ways. I mean, it takes so much time to build an audience. But when you work together with someone like FMAO, who has the best audience, the best fans, they are so loyal, they are so warm and great. So I mean, we might not have come across your fans if it weren't for FMAO. So, I mean, yeah, we're grateful, and it was amazing.
And am I right in saying that Faster Car wasn't written, performed, produced with a specific purpose to find sort of content like this? The first track was just you guys creating your hearts out. Magic happened, struck, and the rest is history. That's how it started, right?
Yeah.
So let's use that as a jumping off point and go back to you, Timothy, and sort of the role of music we think about emotional engagement, of immersion into content, later into gaming. Like, sort of, how do you think about it?
For music and content, I mean, music and content, it's gone hand in hand since the silent film days. Without music, there was no audio. Silent. It was silent. Music has always kind of fed the themes and the emotions of any storytelling. So when we approach music, a lot of it has to do with what's the theme or genre of this video, and where do we want the audience to feel or go while watching this video. So we always have to consistently be updating our music library and trying to find new tracks and everything like that. And our editors do such a fantastic job keeping up with that. And we've been partners with Epidemic for quite a while now. When it came to Faster Car, that was a song that just resonated with Jess. We've used their music in the background of videos before, and that song just always stuck with her, and she just could not stop thinking about it. So when it came time to create a new music video for that season of My Street, she knew exactly what song she was going to pick. There was no questions about it. She just went with it. And we were surprised with how just much it exploded. That music video just led to a bunch of different things for us.
Ben, what are some of your reflections in terms of picking music and the role of music in sort of building both engagement, immersion, and maybe, to your point, consistency? Because between diapers, themes, parks, films, everything, there's a lot of jumping.
Absolutely.
But there is consistency to be had.
And, so the fans of the video game loved it when we play with the theme in the movie. And of course, then we can do it in a variety of different ways. You can compose it and have it performed by a classical orchestra. You can turn it into an epic, sort of action, sort of very, very dramatic moment, and it gets them very, very excited. And as you sort of said, it's one of the bridges. You can have a stylistic bridge, you can have a narrative bridge, you can have Easter eggs, you can have a sound or an audio bridge, and playing with the theme songs, because Angry Birds has some relatively, we're not Mario, like, we're not necessarily that big, but we're pretty recognizable. And so all of the opportunities to kind of remix that and play with that in the movies is definitely something we have done and will continue to do. But there's another element that I think is really important, which is if we take storytelling and emotional engagement, and we've talked about that, that's great. And there's another thing that music is really, really powerful for, which is putting you in a flow state, right? Music can absolutely help you forget about your day, forget about your trials and tribulations, traffic coming home, all of that sort of stuff, and really help you kind of get into the moment and get into the now. And flow state is critical to gaming, whether you're talking about a shooter or a puzzle game or whatever. They all do their best. The players are the most engaged, therefore the happiest, therefore the most likely to return when they happily exist in that flow state. And so music is a really, really critical tool for us in encouraging players to enter into that flow state inside of the sort of more gaming side of what we do. So it's very important across the, whatever transmedia landscape.
It's a great point. So I would love to see if we could get a sense of, we now know how the partnership between AFMAO and Loving Caliber started. So Faster Car was the jumping off point. But talk us through how the relationship has evolved over the years, because it didn't end there, it started there. And there have been sort of several interactions since then in terms of both of music and ideas and sort of tying each other's successes together. So what are some of the thoughts that come to mind in terms of how the relationship has evolved?
Okay. Yeah, so we've always known how much our audience loves Faster Car. I think from there, we've made 4 other music videos, and they all but one has had Loving Caliber attached to it, because our audience just fell in love with Loving Caliber as much as Jess did back then, which was always a good growth point for us. We always kept their music at the end slates when end slates were a thing on YouTube, and now they're gone. But when they were a thing, we kept it on the end slates. We kind of hide it in the background of all our videos. A lot of our shorts used their music. Some of our commercials use their music. It's always been a part of who we are and the DNA of who AFMAO is to begin with. But as we evolved and we realized, hey, we were starting My Street Season 7. Finally, after 4.5 years, we were jumping back into our more flagship series. How do we do that? How do we jump back into this, and how do we present it? And a lot of that was, well, we need music. Well, why don't we just call up Loving Caliber and see if they'll do something original with us? And that sounded much easier than it was. At that point in time, we had no connections. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, how do I get a hold of these guys? And finally...
We were trying to get a hold of you as well. That was crazy.
Yeah, so finally...
It's on us. We need to fix that.
Finally, I reached out to our partner at Epidemic, and they're like, oh, yeah, no, that's us. We could get you with them. I'm like, oh, yay, that would have saved me like 3 months. But yeah, that first meeting was just fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, Jess was super excited to meet you guys. I think she was fanning over Loving Caliber as much as they were fanning over her. Yeah. And talking to them, it just blossomed. They created a song real easily. We really didn't have any changes for that. I wouldn't change a thing, which was ironic for the name. And then it turned into, hey, let's bring them to VidCon 2024, and let's get them on stage. Let's do things. And that, I mean, you would have to speak about that experience because you were up there. But
yeah, it was crazy. I've never been to anything like that ever, and it was all because of you, of course. No, it was great. We performed, and we're not used to that kind of excitement among the audience. So the audience knew every song, and they sang so loud we didn't have to. So that was really awesome. We felt so welcomed, and I really mean it when I say FMAO has the best audience and fans because they are amazing.
But Lina, let's make it a bit more spicy. So, what about integrity as an artist?
Yeah.
As in, is there a line that you don't want to cross? Do you think about it? Because the three of you in collaboration, you've been perfecting your sound, you've been creating your own platform, and then suddenly you live in this almost like a relationship where your fans are their fans, and sort of does that sort of influence you? Do you think about it, and also does your fan base change as a consequence?
I think it changed, and we're fine with it. But I think as a songwriter, it's really important to choose your projects wisely. I mean, you don't have to jump on every opportunity. With FMAO, it was a no-brainer, of course, because we love what she does. So it felt like the perfect match in so many ways. But I mean, we can't really think like that. We have to. I mean, when we write music, it has to come from within ourselves. If we try to create something that we think the audience wants, I think not only will we lose our audience, but perhaps in a way ourselves. Do you know what I mean? So we can't really think as strategic like you have to do perhaps on your creator side. We really have to focus on what we love to do, if it makes sense.
It does. I'm thinking that maybe we start to turn towards the fans a bit more, right? And so to kick us off, I think Timothy, Ben, for both of you, like, what does consumption of entertainment look like among different types of your media? And so to try and set some kind of context, we spoke about this before. I think we all find it interesting that typically you watch a video once and then you've seen it and you don't want to consume it again. And that lives on one side of the media spectrum. And then on the other side, you have music, but also gaming, obviously, which is you play it or you listen to something once, you like it, you do it again and again and again and again, and you consume it a lot. Almost like the more you use it, the more powerful, the more engaging it becomes. And so these are two widely different properties, and sort of the three of you sort of represent all of that. Like, what's your thinking in terms of how this all plays together and sort of how people consume different parts of your offerings?
I believe that once upon a time, you could probably... There's definitely a definition of success whereby you're really, really good at one part of the media landscape. You own it. You're the best there is, or you're good enough for whatever makes you and your team happy. But certainly the world is becoming increasingly complicated. Staying relevant for multiple years is becoming increasingly complicated. In a world of overwhelming choice across every single platform, there's a lot of competition for attention, whether it be on Spotify or the App Store or Netflix or YouTube or what have you. The theory goes that being in multiple places helps because it builds awareness. So even if they're not going to necessarily watch you on Netflix, the fact that they are aware that you're on Netflix might benefit their decision-making when it comes time to choose the next game to download on the App Store. That is part of the transmedia strategy, the transmedia theory. But it means you have to be good across a lot of very, very different platforms, which means you have to work with experts across a lot of different platforms, because the teams who make really great mobile games that become hobbies, right, where you're there every day, multiple times a day, playing happily, maybe even sometimes spending happily on this thing for days, weeks, years. I've been paying and playing a mobile game now for 7 years. So every single day, I haven't missed a single day in 7 years, right? So that level of hobby is a very, very different set of experience than making a really, really, really compelling movie that maybe makes you shed a tear and you tell a couple of friends about it, and then, you know, it's served its purpose. And the teams that build that are fundamentally different composition, expertise, et cetera. Very few people can transcend that level of diverse experiences, in my opinion.
Just a quick follow-up question, and please be brutally honest, because from the outside, it's very easy to give yourself and your teams massive amounts of credit, because it feels brilliant that you have these big movies which are one-off consumption events. You'll see it once and then not see it again. And then in between that, you have these gaming components where people just play again and again and again, and you almost like accumulate huge amounts of fans, and then you release them on the movie, boom, and then it resets again. So it's this beautiful coil that just
that's it, that one.
Is it as strategic, or is that was just fortunate? It played out that way.
Did anyone record that so we can just like copy and paste that on our next slide deck? What he said. That's the definition of transmedia success.
More luck, as in life, right? So
I mean, absolutely, yes. Of course, it is intentional, and of course, you in an ideal world, you would expect it to be, reciprocal, right? That the player base that you build up over the years of a mobile game, you then can sort of direct towards a movie, and then day one you sell out all 3,000 theaters in the U.S. For the opening weekend. But then you also sell them out that second weekend, and all of those people then immediately flock to your video games, and your video games get sustained and durable, rocket ships of player engagement. That's the dream. And some of that happens in bits and pieces, but there is no example to date of a transmedia success story, including the Sonic movies, the Mario movies, the Last of Us TV show, the Fallout TV show. There is no example of it being a perfect storm where 1 + 1 = 5, right? Where you've got that sort of synergistic combination where the audiences just begin to sort of snowball at a sustained level. You get peaks, and those peaks pay dividends, and you get long-term brand awareness, and that long-term brand awareness pays dividends. But there are still a lot of work to do to kind of make sure that your gaming fans become your movie fans, and your movie fans become your gaming fans. And again, not just unique to Angry Birds. That's anyone who has frankly, the luxury, because it's a select few IPs who are in this space, but any IP that has the luxury to play in the transmedia space faces a similar challenge.
Right. Timothy, where does your mind go if I say karaoke?
Karaoke?
Yeah. Have you not created karaoke versions of tracks?
Oh man, yeah. So we did that with Loving Caliber for our latest music video, trying to just be like, hey guys, can I have this? And then having my editors did a fantastic job trying to line up when people should be saying things and highlighting the words. I mean, they did so well on it. I can't take that credit. It was just, I had the idea, let's make a karaoke version, threw it to my editors, and they did the magic. No, but things like that. I mean, for us, I know, when it talks about the audience and having that strong audience, it's because we go out of our way to do small things like that. We don't, most creators, they're just, hey, here's the music video, they call it a day. And yeah, those do well, and we've seen our music videos last longer than our videos because music is something you can do over and over and over again. But by giving them these little pieces, little just, hey, extras, here's things that we don't have to do, but we want to do it for you guys. We know they love that stuff, so we just kind of feed it to them so that, they see, hey, we're paying attention. We know what you are asking for, and we're trying to deliver as much as we can. Doing things like that, it's always a lot of fun. But when it came to making it, that was definitely my editing team and not me. They did a fantastic job.
I just think that that's such a smart way to utilize the fact that people want to consume music again and again and again. And sort of karaoke, you use that phenomenon and you get people sort of engaged and start to create, which brings us to the last point before we open up for questions, which is fan involvement. Wow. Should have held it closer. So fan involvement, where do you come down in terms of where you see that in the creative process? Because it's clear to everyone in this room that you're obviously brilliant at what you do, but sometimes the fans are even more brilliant because they unlock things, they help you co-create, sort of they push the envelope, and from a music, gaming, storytelling perspective. And so, see, Timothy, you just spoke. Ben, I'm going to sort of throw over to you. Sort of, what about if we start talking art story and sort of Rovio experiences around fans?
I mean, fans have been doing Angry Birds fan art since Angry Birds existed, right? If you go to
explain that for the audience. What does that mean?
Well, so the characters, Red, Chuck, and we actually have like over 50 characters in the world of Angry Birds, 50 named characters. But Red, Chuck, and Bomb are the three that most people know. Red is the red one, Chuck is the yellow one, Bomb is the black one. Those are the most famous three. So those three characters have been put into art drawn by people, sitting in their school doodling and then taking a photo of it and uploading it to Twitter/X/Instagram. For time immemorial. Sometimes they spend, or time immemorial, 15 years. Sometimes they spend hours and hours and hours drawing very, very rich, detailed scenes. There's some fan art, that probably took 10, 15 hours for them to do, and they do it in multiple passes. There are some fans who do, fan art almost every week, right? Like it's a regular thing, or they'll do like an animation like every week.
They don't get paid.
No.
Pure fandom.
This is the definition of fandom, right? And we, are very lucky and very grateful to have that level of fandom. It again, it's a double-edged sword, because if you mess with them, they'll let you know, and if you do anything wrong, they'll let you know. But it can be really, really powerful if you if your IP allows for it. So case in point, a year or so ago, a fan, an artist named Crema Draws, who was a very regular fan art creator, would do lots of great artwork in the Angry Birds universe, took a character who had been, appeared in a comic book panel once 15 years ago and then, never appeared again kind of thing, and retconned her and basically said, I'm going to redraw her, and I'm going to draw her in a much cooler way, and here it is. I'm going to name her Ruby, and owned her, right? So the community would start saying like, oh yeah, like Ruby, that's Red's girlfriend. And Crema Draws was like, no, bad community, wrong. It's not his girlfriend, it's his sister. And like this is, and he really
important distinction.
He really owned it, right? And I looked and I was just like, damn, check out this dude over here. And so I reached out and we started chatting, and he had the art Bible done, and he had like the bio done, and he had the backstory done, and he had all of this work. And I kind of looked around at our lore and I sort of said, it fits. Like, this doesn't violate anything. It allows us to tell a new story about where this character had been all of these years, and et cetera, et cetera. Let's canonize it. Like, let's do it. Come on, everyone, get on board. And a couple of game teams jumped on board really early, and that was really exciting. And we've got a lot more really sort of exciting stuff coming, including like transmedia stuff, right? So like, here is a character that was created by a fan. We partnered with that fan to, let's just say sort of like sand off the rough edges and make sure that it integrated into RP in a really cohesive way. That was, what I was responsible for. And now we have an addition to the IP that fan feels obviously a strong sense of connection to, but also the entire fandom can rally around and sort of celebrate and applaud, and also maybe hold up as a reference, as an example of like, maybe one day, right? Maybe we too can add to our beloved IP in a similar way. So to me, that was a really lovely example, specific to the Angry Birds IP, of how sort of deep, deep, passionate fandom can meaningfully shape the direction of the IP for years to come. It's not always possible, but in this particular example, it really worked out.
I think that's a beautiful example, so much so that that's a tough act to follow, Timothy. But you want to give it a go?
It really is. I mean, for sure. I mean, the AFMAL fan base, I mean, we have some of the most dedicated and passionate fan base that any YouTuber could have. Our fan base, we love seeing how much they create, and they create a lot. There's a lot of fan art out there of our characters. I mean, some really, really good. Some that's like, hey, we had an episode where Aaron had to sleep next to Garth in a bed, and now there's weird fan base that you probably shouldn't look up. Like,
it's a graphic novel. If I've ever read one.
But it's all part of it, though. You want them to be passionate. You want them to want to be involved, because when they're involved, they're there. They're dedicated, and we show that attention. We love seeing it. Like almost everybody in our office, they really do a good job of going out there and finding these things and seeing these things and seeing how dedicated our fans are, because it's a part of who AFMAO is to begin with. Without the audience, we wouldn't be there. So paying tribute to the audience as much as we can is always an important piece of what we want to do.
It's crucial. And also, it's just brilliant. The whole sort of co-creation that happens is amazing. Dean, I don't know if you want to close us off in this segment. From your perspective, having accumulated, as we now know, millions of listeners, fans all around the world, have you been able to pick up things that sort of love, suggestions, ideas that have come from your fans that help co-create the music you put out, the albums that you think about?
Yeah, of course. Of course. I don't know how to follow that question. Like, yes, of course.
And so I think that let's do the following. Timing-wise, we are 20 past, so we're actually good for time. And so had I been home in freezing Sweden, we would have opened up for questions, and absolutely no one would have had a single question because we're super socially awkward and we'd never want to expose ourselves. I'm hoping that we're in the US. It might be slightly different here. And so there is a distinct microphone standing in the middle of the room there. So if anyone feels that they have a question that they would like to put to the incredible panel, please be our guest. Look at that. Hey!
Hi, my volume good. So my question is kind of, when you look at transmedia empires, whatever, and you're talking about reaching that perfect feedback loop, how much of that is almost a pipe dream? You know, the example used was Last of Us, right? But you can also look at the whole Marvel universe, right? They got the cinematic universe, they got, the games, they've got obviously the comics. How much is it worth it just to have all of these spaces and all this cross-pollination, and how much can you capitalize on the larger brand awareness without having to need, that perfect feedback loop? Is there value in it, even if you don't achieve that dream?
It's a good question. Who wants to jump in first?
I mean, I'll be quick about it so that Ben could answer. But from our point of view, so AFMAO, I mean, it's a brand that's been here for a decade. Our audience base has always been strong and been around. We could be jumping into certain things really quickly just to kind of make our brand awareness out there and, just get our name out there. But we didn't. It was a lot of strategic and a lot of closely monitored partnerships that we joined into. We're releasing our first graphic novel when a lot of our competitors and neighbor YouTubers, they're on their 11th. Well, it was, hey, who do we want to work with? How do we want to go down this path? What sort of companies, we have HarperCollins on that one. Fantastic company to work with, fantastic to be around. What sort of bands do we want to work with? What sort of music do we want? It was very specific with how we approach it, because we, on our side, are looking at more longevity than just getting our name. So for us, it's more that point of view. I'm not sure with it.
No, I mean, no, 100%. I mean, I would, and just take it one step further. If product X, movie, TV show, toy line, cannot stand on its own 2 feet without the IP, and it cannot be successful without the IP, you shouldn't do it. It has to be a fantastic movie. It has to be a fantastic graphic novel, elevated by the AFMAO collab, by the fact that it's AFMAO, right? Which means you have to have a fantastic partner, a fantastic writer, a fantastic artist, a fantastic distributor, a fantastic publisher who can look at it and objectively say, yep, that's one of the best graphic novels I've ever seen. And now it's made even better because it's got this rabid fan base from YouTube who are all going to swarm and buy a bunch of copies. When people try and jump on the transmedia hype train and they try and make something because they think that it's gonna somehow serve as like a commercial for the thing they actually care about, you feel it. You immediately feel it. Everyone feels it, and everyone just senses that it was a misfire. And people who take the opportunity of transmedia seriously get really upset when we see those kinds of collaborations happen. And they happen a lot. Like, I'm not pretending that every single thing we've ever done has been a 10 out of 10. Like, sometimes despite your best interests, you have those misfires. But that's what you have to fight up against, right? Anything that you ship on any platform has to stand on its own 2 feet and be amongst the best on that platform. And you have to have the IP coherency that's going to allow for some sort of hopping between the platforms.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Look, there's a line.
Yeah. Hey, my name is John. Thank you all for talking. I've appreciated hearing what you have to say. And I'm wondering, I don't know if it's 3 questions or really just the last one that's important, but it was mentioned that playing games for 7 years, 365 days was the thing. And I'm just kind of wondering if that is something that we want in our industry. Like, how do we protect players, gamers, and audiences from becoming users, I guess is...
I mean, I can take it. Yeah, sure. This is why I really like the word hobby as opposed to, say, addiction. I like to think I can stop playing this game any day, anytime I want. I choose not to because I really deeply enjoy it. The game in question, by the way, if anyone wonders, is Marvel Strike Force. I'm a huge superhero nerd, and I just love a game where I get to fight superheroes against each other all the time. Little free promotion for Marvel there. But, I think obviously they want me to be like hooked, right? So I like happily stay, and I want to have a game that I wake up every morning looking forward to playing. Currently, I feel like I'm in that camp. I wake up in the morning and I want to play that game because I want to see how my characters have done, and et cetera, et cetera. I also play The Last of Us. I also play, single player, PC console games. I play quite a lot of different things, and I happily do that. I happily have this hobby of mine. As much as I loved Red Dead Redemption 2, when I finished it, I put it aside, and I haven't gone back to it the way that I currently do with some of these free-to-play games that I play. So at least for me, and I don't pretend that I represent everyone, they both absolutely have a role in my entertainment consumption, and I embrace it. I think it's great. But I can't speak for society. I can only speak for myself.
I'll just drop in one reflection there. So I think it's a great question because it forces you to think and take a step back. But I too reacted when you said subscription 7 years, you played it every single day, until I realized that, well, I'm exactly the same because I've had this subscription now for 15 years. I use the product every single day and I pay for it, and it's Spotify. And so people wouldn't flinch and say, "Oh, that's weird. Like you listen to music every single day. That's off. That's wrong. Like you have an addiction." And for some reason, I don't think society sees that as an addiction. They see that it's something that's cool, and maybe even sort of soothing for my soul and stuff like that. And so maybe it's a timing thing that we'll get there, or maybe not. But the fact that we sort of talk about it and think about it, I think is just healthy.
Hey, fantastic panel, and great to meet you all. I'm Joel. I've worked with Oscar at Epidemic Sound. One of the subjects you talked on towards the end, I'd just love to hear a little bit more about, actually, and it was to do with the role that the fan had in helping canonize part of the IP. It's something, like, as a content consumer myself, I've been observing and noticing. So if I give an example, like with a lot of people be familiar with Dragon Ball Z. Now, Dragon Ball recently, over the last few years, like had a new kind of series come out called Dragon Ball Super. And I was getting really into that, and being a fan of Dragon Ball Z as a kid. And what was interesting is there was an animated series, and then they started doing the manga, but it was so slow to come out. It was like monthly. And you have a lot of filler content as well, which is good, but you kind of want to get to the good stuff. And then there's like intermissions and like long breaks of like a year or so for this stuff to come out. And there's a real loyal, fanatical fan base there, but also it's impatient. And what I've seen is that, yeah, there's lots of bad like fan fiction and fan content, but there's also some really good stuff. And what was even more interesting is that lots of the fan creators often kind of knew where the wider audience wanted to go more than like Akira Toriyama and Toritaro who were working on it. And what I've seen is that there's a particular creator who's like, and it's good what he's doing. He's doing like voiceover work and like creating his own manga. I think he's making around 50,000 a month on Patreon. Right? And so I think the mistake some brands can make with this is to look at it and see, well, that's a threat, we should shut it down. And look, there can be some threats, because if you've got like content that's harmful to the IP, I get that. But also you can look at it and say, how do we lean into it? And I think where a lot of like generative AI is going and a lot of the creator tools that are there are ways to actually make really, really good engaging content that can almost like keep fans waiting ahead of the actual canon stuff. And there's a risk of losing that attention to something else, even though we've got loads of screens. But more than that, I think the ultimate like win for a fan is to get something canonized. So when you gave that example, I thought that is like the coolest thing ever, because one of my favorite computer games, Final Fantasy VII, I'm like, what if I wrote my own fan fiction and that actually became canon? That's a really cool thing. So sorry for the whole like spiel on that.
Absolutely.
It's just an interesting subject, but I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on this and where it's going. And I guess how even like fans and the IP owners could come together.
Let's hand it over to the panel.
Yeah. I definitely would love to respond to that. To be clear, and I totally love your examples, and I wish I could stand up here and say every single Angry Birds fan who's ever drawn a fan art or written a piece of fan fiction, a lot more fan art than fan fiction, but whatever, that they all can, participate and will canonize them all. That would be murder, right? I would never say that. The fans might love me to say that, but that would be murder for the IP. It would be murder for coherency. It would be murder for our value proposition. That's not what I'm sort of suggesting. But nor am I suggesting that the right attitude is, I'm the creator, you're the consumer, I know what's right, I'm not interested in hearing what you have to say, I'll tell you when the next beat drops and you'll buy my work. And I know that some creators have that more sort of draconian sort of relationship with the IP and like they have to own it and control it in a very, very sort of tight way. I don't know what the tools are that are going to get us to this hypothetical world. Maybe it's generative, maybe it's other, but I do believe that fans, digital natives, who are born in a remix culture, who are born in a purely digitally native culture where entertainment is available at literally the flick of a thumb, right? I do believe that they have an expectation of interaction, of a two-way conversation with the creators that they follow, with the IPs that they love. And I believe that IPs and creators who can find a way to have that conversation sometimes and make those fans heard sometimes and elevate those fans sometimes have a strategic advantage.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's something that traditional media is learning from more the creator media that we are now in, because no one will listen as well as a YouTuber or Instagram or TikToker who's paying attention to their audience base, right? We get an instant update of what our audience wants. Traditional media, they don't get that. TV shows, Netflix, most of them don't get to know until after it's made. We get to know right away, and we're paying attention, and we're changing and fluctuating and re-steering based on what we're seeing in real-time stats. So I think traditional media is starting to look towards how creators do that and how creators steer quickly and turn quickly, and they're learning lessons from creators and working with creators now to really understand what the audience actually wants. And I think that a part of that is that the creators, we pay attention to our audience, we pay attention to the fans, and we are more engaged than most of those traditional media usually is.
Unfortunately, we're at time. I think that we have to round things off. But so here's what I'd like to try and see if I could pull off. So I want to see if I can close us off, and then but I also think that we can stick around in this room for a couple of minutes because it's lunch, and then the next session isn't for another hour and a half. So first off, what's the context? We live in turbulent times. That's true. but at the same time, we live in marvelous times. Like, content creation is in the middle of a renaissance, and there hasn't been this much innovation and evolution and experimentation for many, many decades, as illustrated by the last question. It's a spectacular time to be alive, and if you pay attention and you lean in, sort of brilliant things will and can happen. I'm incredibly grateful to have this super generous panel with us, starting with you, Linda, who've flown all the way from Europe to participate. And thank you so much for coming up here, putting yourselves out there, and for sharing so generously with the audience and amongst all of us. It's been a true privilege to be here. I hope I was able to pull off being a tic-tac. And we will stick around. And so don't be strangers, come up, ask questions, because the conversation has only just begun. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Now I wish I had a box of Tic Tacs.